podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
And welcome back to the Social Media Derby. We've got a great episode for you today after a very eventful couple of matches, particularly the one with England last night. We're also going to get into some of the transfer news or the latest transfer news for Man United and Arsenal, as well as obviously, I guess in this case, not just some transfer news, but maybe some organisational news for our old Man United. But before we do that, for those of you watching on YouTube, as always, please subscribe to the channel, like the video and share it if you can. Also, please feel free to comment down below. Let us know what you think of what we're talking about, all right? And then for those of you listening on Spotify, Apple, or any other podcasting platform, please follow and give us a 5-star review if you can. All right, well, let's get into the show, Ant. So first off, before we get into any of the transfer news, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm all right. Bit knackered. Had a gym session and then was moving some and getting a new shed. So, yeah, anyone interested in the old garden action and sheds and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, getting rid of my old one and moving the new bits in today. So, had a very active day. But, yeah, looking forward to getting into especially the Euro stuff. But, yeah, some of the big transfer news, or like you said, the big news, shall we say, from our clubs over the last couple of weeks.
Well, let's get straight into it then. We'll talk a little bit about Man United first. You've obviously got Xerxes we talked about on previous episodes. Obviously, I don't know if we need to talk that much more about that in terms of maybe some updates, but there are two new names been thrown into the ring recently. A couple of names that we'll recognise from previous seasons and links and so on. One of them is Ugarte, who I currently plays for PSG, right?
Yeah.
A very kind of old school throwback type of DM, known for his let's say controversial tactics. I think he'd fit in very well with Leacher the Butcher. And then a surprise one, Eric Dyer's understudy, Matthias de Ligt. So those two would appear to be edging closer to happen. What do you think about those ones, mate? We'll start with obviously Xerxes, Ugarte and de Ligt. Who do you think there is going to be your favourite, and do you think that they're all starters in your team?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I won't chat about Xerxes too much because we have talked about him loads. And yeah, I would be really happy with him. I think he's kind of a throwback to what Martial it looks like it anyway from the clips I've seen. And I've said before, he kind of looks in that mould, not necessarily like a pure gunman type finisher, but more of a player who gets involved in the play. And I think we need that just to have a bit more variety. I remember you speaking a lot about Arsenal needing a bit more variety in their players so they can adjust how they play and stuff. And I think it's been a real miss not having Anthony Martial at least available to come in for certain games and rotate with Højlund this last season. So I'd be really happy with him. I don't think he would necessarily be a starter straight away. I do think I think it'll be a bit of a battle between him and Højlund, to be honest. And I think whoever performs the best will probably keep the shirt. With Ugarte, I like it. The only Uruguayan, or maybe the last Uruguayan we had was Eddie Cavani, and he was one of my favourite players when he was at United. I just thought his attitude was top. And he had that like South American grit, that stereotypically fiery nature, and he was when it comes to a finisher, he was top for us, and I think he helped everyone. I think the attacking unit looked better when Cavani was with us, and so if Ugarte comes in and does anything like that for our midfield, I'd be absolutely delighted because like you said, he's a bit old school. I do think he kind of unfairly gets just like broad brushed as like an enforcer, ball winner, and someone who sticks it about. He's decent on the ball. He gets it down. He's got a good touch, and he finds nice simple passes. And to be honest, I think that's perfect for what we need in that midfield. And it's a lot around, like you said, he's got an engine. He'll get around the pitch, and he's got youthful exuberance, which I think we need. We've been lacking because obviously no offense to Casemiro, but he doesn't have those traits. Like, he has the tackling, he has that kind of stuff, which I still think he's inherently pretty good at. But in terms of getting around the pitch, I think he was getting exposed like habitually throughout the whole season. Like, you called
Yeah.
it in the first game against Wolves. I remember we talked about it, and it was like, oh my god, he was just getting bypassed by Cunha, Huang. I think Mateus Nunes was still playing for them at that time. Even he was drifting past them. Like, it was just non-stop. So I think setting up with someone in that midfield who will be able to handle that kind of tempo and that kind of game, I think is great. And I think he'll, it's hard to predict how a partnership will work, but if I'm trying to imagine what the midfield would look like, I think we all would say Kobbie Mainoo's probably, like, his name's on the team sheet after last season. So we're looking for a partner for Kobbie. And I do think someone who's a bit more combative, someone who can get round the pitch, because I don't think that's Kobbie's greatest strength. Like, I do think he could potentially get exposed as well when it comes to, that kind of covering ground element of his game. So I think Ugarte would be great. It'd be interesting what the fee is, because PSG, they spent quite a bit on him. So it'll be interesting to see what they want. I've seen reports saying it would be like between 30 and 40 million. If that is the case and he's on a decent contract, I'm super happy with that. Age profile works, style works, financials, seem like they work as well. The Delict one is super interesting. So I want to get your opinion on this too, because the Man U fan base one, and yeah, you're obviously going to add your jokes. Yeah, I get it. Dutch Harry Maguire, blah, blah, blah. I'll take it on the chin. No Diddy. But Delict, I've seen a lot of Man U fans are either going down that route of, like, he's not mobile, he's just a big Dutch Maguire, he's flopped at two big clubs, what we doing? But then other people have looked into his, I'm not, Statman Dave, Statman Ant or anything like that, but they look at his, like, attributes, and actually it's a bit of an eyes, is a bit deceptive on the eye type situation, because he's not slow and he's not necessarily moving like per Mertesacker in his retirement, moving like a bloody cruise ship taking 50 knots to turn left and right. But yeah, he's obviously not rapid, but I do think he could work. I think he's got the physicality, he's got the strength. He's good on the ball, actually. His pass completion rates and stuff everything is super high. So it could work, but of course, I think the slight trepidation I have is that he's been at two big clubs and it's not really gone well. And it started with Italy, which has got no pace. It's now got to Germany, which has got a bit of pace, and now he's coming to England, which is like the most rapid, fast-moving version of football I think out there. So the evidence is not fantastic when he's been dealing with slower pace. So I'm open to it. I don't think it will be an absolutely stinky deal. I think it could work. But I understand why some United fans are a little bit, squeaky bum about it, because
Yeah,
it's a dodgy one. What do you think, man? Be honest with me. Get your
so
jokes off and then be
I'm going
honest.
to talk about all of them. I think Ugarte would be a class signing for you. I think he's exactly what you need. I think people have kind of not misprofiled, but I think Kobbie's real strength is on the ball. And I think people have realised that probably over the last half season, and probably thought at the beginning he was going to be kind of just a good all-rounder, able to play the ball off and do kind of silky tempo dictating type of stuff. But I think we've shown that he's shown that he's able to do quite a lot more than that, and is pretty good on the attacking side of the ball. So I think Ugarte next to him is a very good partnership. I think Ugarte will do all of that kind of dirty work that doesn't necessarily get the plaudits, but is really crucial to unlock the ability for Mainoo to do what he needs to do, and particularly to unlock what Bruno needs to do, right? And we've just obviously watched the Portugal game against Slovenia. He was spraying balls left, right, and centre, and again, he can be really, really devastating to the opposition if you give him the time and you surround him with the right kind of players to do what he needs to do. So I think Ugarte smashes out of the park. 30, 40 million. You got to say yes to that all day long. On Delict, I'm less convinced. I think depending on the fee, it could be a good signing. I think he's not terrible. He's still young. I think he's got a lot of, in my opinion, throwback type of capabilities that would work in a different time, but maybe he doesn't have some of the things that are required to be kind of that modern all-round type of centre back that we're asking for. But I think if you pair him well with Leacher, I think that will cover up some of his deficiencies, right? I think he's, one thing I've noticed about him is that he's not really a front foot defender. Like, he's not going out there and trying to go and get the ball. He's got pretty poor stats when it comes to tackles won. He's got pretty poor stats when it comes to blocks and stuff like that. He's not great at interceptions, those kinds of things. But he is really good in the air. He is pretty good when it comes to, not getting dribbled past. He's, I think, a good kind of big defender, I'm going to call them, right? The big defenders to put next to somebody who's more mobile. So from my point of view, Leach really does all of that kind of front foot defending. He's going to get involved, get stuck in, get people, try and catch people on the ball and so on. And I think if you put him next to De Ligt, it will cover up a lot of De Ligt's possible weaknesses. I do think, though, De Ligt, something about him strikes me as maybe not mentally strong enough to be able to lead a team. And I think all of this gas about him being like the captain and, the superhero type of defender, I think was really overdone previously. I don't think he's necessarily able to do that. And I think you've seen now when he tries to lead the line for Juventus or lead the line for Bayern, he's just not that guy. I think you need to put him next to somebody who's going to be a real gritty defender. I think if you stick Ugarte in front of him, even you're really surrounding him with the right kind of mentality for him to be able to kind of not skate along, but, get his head down and actually focus on what he needs to do. And he kind of strikes me similarly to Varane in that, Varane's not a massive personality. He's not the Roy Keane. He's not going to lead your team and motivate everyone and go crazy all the time, but he's really good at what he does. And if you give him the right tools around him, like the Sergio Ramos is, those kinds of players, he does a bloody good job of doing what he needs to do in the defense. So I think De Ligt could be a really good kind of replacement for him. I do think it's overbaked that everyone thinks that he is like a Harry Maguire regen and he's really slow and so on. I think he's a lot more mobile than Harry Maguire. I do think he will have similar issues, though, of just that size and that profile of player, where you're not going to be the most, the quickest off the line. You're not going to have the highest acceleration. That's not what you'd expect from a mahoosive defender. So I think he could be good, but if I go and see 50, 60 million for him, I don't know if it's worth the bang for buck is really there, because I think there are other options out there that don't have as big a name as he does, don't come from as big a club as he does, that you could go and get for a bit cheaper that would probably do a similar level of job. So we talked on the last podcast about are Man United fans ready to not have those marquee names and those marquee signings. I think Xerxes is in line with that, right? Not a marquee signing. Ugarte, I think, also is kind of in line with that. People know him, but he's not, blowing the, everyone's socks off. But De Ligt seems to be going back to that, we need to get a marquee name type of thing. And the only way I see it working is if you've got him cheap. And if you can somehow convince him to get his wages down or whatever else, right? I don't know what his wages are, but I'm going to imagine they're pretty decent being at Bayern and being a young kind of centre-back position. So, yeah, it's going to depend on the details. I think the devil will be in the details there. But I'm not massively against it. It could work out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I agree with most of that. I think he's made poor choices. And I think that, there is a trend alongside kind of all three of these players where they're on a bit of like a redemption arc. Like Xerxes was at the big club, didn't make it. He had to humble himself, go to like some smaller teams in Italy, Parmas and Bolognas, and do, kind of earn his stripes. Ugarte went for the big move to PSG. Didn't work out. Like, that's obviously why they're trying to sell him. Back in the last season, he wasn't a first team player. So, there's that kind of, he's almost, he's going to be tarnished with the tag of he's failed at the big club. And now he's trying to, revive his career. De Ligt,
he's the biggest failure out of all of them.
De Ligt made a series, not just one mistake with his transfers. He made two. and this is really his kind of last chance saloon, I think, at a big club. If this doesn't go well, then I think the only way is not Essex but down. I think he's gonna be in trouble in terms of being at those big teams. So he should have never gone to Juventus. Um, they had Bonucci, they had Chiellini that was still holding on to those positions, and they weren't like ready to vacate them. So him coming in off all the like the part of the thing I agree on, it was that he was overhyped and overgassed as this like 18-year-old leader off of a couple of amazing seasons for Ajax. And I do think he was their leader, but I do think context was important in that team. Like, the way it was set up, the management, the league, everything about it was kind of like an Ajax under Van Gaal in the early 90s where everyone was young, everyone was like, so someone had to emerge and kind of, lead the team. It wasn't necessarily, he didn't have the obstacles that a normal team would have, was where you've got some veterans and some, players of different ages that you've got to try and get all together. And at Juventus, I think he stepped into the worst possible situation. The club was in absolute turmoil, number one, right, with all the stuff that was going on around it and all the financial mess that it was in. And then positionally, he was not gonna dislodge those guys coming off the back of winning a Euros. It was not going to happen, So I think he made a poor choice. He should have gone somewhere else. I think the Bayern move, on face value, I thought it was decent. But you're seeing what's going on with Bayern, right? He's chosen again another team that are going through a bit of turmoil, and they've got such strong leadership in there that it was always going to be, and aging players and stuff like that with big characters. It was always going to be really hard for him, I think, to kind of make it his own. So I think United might be in the right moment for him to come in terms of defence, right? If Harry Maguire leaves, because I've seen rumours of that, if Lindelof leaves, if a few people vacate, him and Martinez will kind of be the most experienced defenders in that crop. And along with Onana, will kind of be tasked with kind of, setting the spine of the team, and Nagate potentially, and, those guys that are coming in the team. So
but doesn't it strike you that he's gone for heritage clubs that have been in disarray, and now he's looking at Man United, which is another heritage club that's also in disarray?
Yeah, no. I mean, I get it. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic in saying and feeling like we've hit our rock bottom. They're making the right moves, and the hope is to come out of it. Like, I feel like there's an acceptance that we are in the mud, right? Like, I think the fans some deluded fans might not be accepting it. Some deluded fans still might not be accepting it and want the marquees, like you're saying, and all that kind of stuff. For sure, you can't convince the whole fan base, but I think a lot of people are very realistic about it. And you hear no outrage about Xerxes and Ugarte, like lesser names being linked. A lot of people are actually happy about that. So I think him turning up, even though I don't disagree with Mudded, we finished 8th. I don't know. It feels like the trend is hopefully going in different directions. When he rocked up at Juve and Bayern, this was pre-mud, or they were like just about slipping in the mud, and he had to go through all the drama. Whereas hopefully he's coming at a different point in our journey, and yeah.
Well, let's talk about that then.
We'll see.
A different point in your journey. Part of a different point in your journey is a man who's been battling gardening leave for the last flipping 6 months.
He's been building sheds as well.
Big old Dan Ashworth. Yeah, he's been in the shed just waiting for Newcastle to leave him alone. It looks to be confirmed now that he's going to be moving from Newcastle to Man United. I don't know what black magic you worked in the background to finally get Newcastle to agree. I'm assuming it's a decent bit of money. But what do you make of that? And are you happy to now have him kind of confirmed after this whole saga?
Yeah, so the hit squad's been assembled finally. Barada started today. Wilcox has been in position already for a couple of months. And now Dan Ashworth starts. They said immediately from the stuff that I read. So they've obviously settled and he's straight into it. So I'm happy, man. I'm not going to hear some of these deluded Newcastle fans now suddenly like every good thing that Newcastle did in the last 2 years was done by Eddie Howe or, the sheikh that owns their club or whatever.
It's copium.
It is complete, absolute copium. Like, I'm not going to say he's the genius like a lot of Liverpool fans. I'm aiming at everyone now. A lot of Liverpool fans talk about Michael Edwards, right? After Klopp's left, they've gone copium in the other direction. Newcastle, now Ashworth's gone, it's copium in the manager's direction. Everything was how, all that Ashworth signing stunk, all of this, blah, blah, blah. The proof will be in the pudding, man. We'll see how good he is. His track record is certainly decent. So I'm just glad it's not the boys' club people. And I'm just glad you're going for people who could be perceived as best in class, right? Or at least their reputation around is that they're,
you guys have got your own type of copium. I get it.
We do.
You've got your. We've got the structure now. Copium. Let's
no.
see if it works.
No. I'm not going to go that far. I'm saying we've got a structure. I'm not going to say it's the structure. This is better than Murto and
structure,
the bankers. Like we had the bankers. We had the bankers in before. So the fact we've actually got football people in now, that's a start. Now they've got to do the job. I'm not just going to celebrate this like some people are and breaking news. We've got the guy, blah, blah, blah. We'll have to wait and see, man. Like at the moment, the jury's out. Maybe Newcastle fans are right. Maybe they're just, copium. We'll find out. But I'm just glad it's done. I think to answer your question, it was the PSR stuff that helped us get this done, by the way, which Newcastle have done absolute madness on because they've sold like one of their youth players, Elliot Anderson, who looked decent, but 35 million. Oh my God. How have they managed to black magic that you were talking about earlier? That's black magic right there. And then they managed to sell a guy that they bought for 6 million last year. And that,
hasn't played a game for them.
Our mutual friend, one of our mutual friends supports Newcastle. He was at my house yesterday watching the England game. And he was telling me, he's going to be this big player. And, that's the one that he really was sad about. Meanwhile, I'll find out they bought him last season for 6 million. And he's gone on loan for 1 year, and that's it. And they flipped that to 30. And I'm like, if it wasn't Brighton buying it, because Brighton buying him is the only thing that makes
me think sign that he might
maybe he's good, because their scouts know things. But if it wasn't, if it was someone else like Elliot Anderson going to a random team for 30 million, I'd say that looks dodgy to me. Yeah. I think it was the PSR stuff that helped us find a middle ground that the compensation, that package that we were willing to pay, and because I think Newcastle were asking for something stupid like 15 or 20 million before, and I think we were offering like 2. So there's an absolute gaping chasm between those two numbers. So we probably found a place somewhere in the middle and paid it off.
And that's a good point to get onto the Arsenal stuff, because let's bloody hope that desperation continues so we can get Isak off them. Because I saw some weird comment the other day that said a Tottenham insider believes that Arsenal are confirmed to be going for Isak or whatever, which makes absolutely no sense to me. First of all, why would a Tottenham person know that? Second of all, what the hell has it got to do with him? But yeah, let's get on to Arsenal then. We talked about this a little bit in kind of our short conversation yesterday. It would appear that Arsenal are asking for some pretty crazy prices for a couple of our players, right? So Eddie Nketiah, not my favourite player. Not a bad player, but not my favourite player. It looks like we're quoting 50 million is our asking price for him. And then old Emile Smith-Rowe, obviously very close to a lot of Arsenal fans' hearts. We're quoting for 25 million to our interested clubs. So I'm going to comment on this one first, and then we'll get your feedback on it. I honestly think the Nketiah one is mental. I think 50 million for him is...
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Would be amazing. If we could get 50 million for him, I would consider that to be the signing or the selling of the summer. I don't think you could. Yeah, I don't think you could ever get that kind of money for somebody unless you're Man City or unless you're fiddling with the books, which is also possibly allegedly what Man City have been doing. So I think that one's crazy. I think we should settle if we get 30, 35 million for him. If Elliot Anderson's worth that, I don't see why Nketiah is not. So if we could get 30, 35 million for him, I think that would be sufficient. I think 50 million is just really, it's basically telling the market that you don't want to sell him, which is, I really hope, not the direction that we're going with that. I think 25 million for Smith Rowe, in my opinion, is actually crazy in the other direction. I know that he's got a lot of injury problems, and he's obviously out of favour at Arsenal, and that kind of tells the market that we don't really value him all that much. But I think just based off of the fact that he's actually had a successful season in the Premier League already, and the fact that he's still so young and also English, I think he hits he ticks a lot of boxes, in my opinion, for a mid to lower table team in the Premier League. And we know these days that 25 million is not crazy numbers for them to swing. So I think actually, 25 million for Smith Rowe, whoever cops him, I think that's a pretty good deal, because I think if you can keep him fit, I don't see why he can't become your kind of star player. Like, we've seen Ross Barkley become the star of Luton. We've seen, Morgan Gibbs-White becoming the star of Nottingham Forest. I don't see why, if you can't keep him fit, he doesn't become your star player if you're a kind of, again, a mid to lower table team. So I think 25 million for him, again, if you can keep him fit, is a steal. So, I don't think we'll be able to actually fetch those prices, because I'm seeing crazy things recently about, the fees that people are willing to pay for Ramsdale and all these other players. For some reason, everyone's treating us as if, we're not deserving of money, and we're just, Mr. Moneybags. So everyone's coming in with these really low figures. So I don't think we're going to get 50 million for Nketiah or 25 million for Smith Rowe. For Nketiah, rightly so, but for Smith Rowe, I think that I would be disappointed if I saw him leave for less. So that's kind of my viewpoint on it. But what do you think, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I agree on the Nketiah one. I mean, we've run banter and laughed about it, and I think the roundness of the number 50 million makes us think that's just bonkers. But if you take a minute to deep it and think what's actually been going on in the market, and people,
is a bad market for strikers, I will say right now.
Yeah, the striker market we're starving, right? People are struggling out here. How starving people would be to have to spend 50 million on Nketiah is a different thing, but people are starving out here, right? Yeah. So Nketiah probably does look like, filet mignon right now to a lot of teams that are looking for a striker, and all they're seeing is a sea of Big Macs. So I get it. I don't think it's absolutely bonkers, but I do think it's probably slightly overvaluing him. You're probably looking at around the 30 million range. I think it's quite fair, because he's scored a few goals in the Prem. He's shown that he can hack it as a rotational player for you guys, which means that he can make that step to being a first teamer at a mid to a lower table team. So I think 30 million is probably around what you might end up fetching for him, and I think that would be a decent deal. I think the Emil Smith Rowe one, I agree with your sentiment, but the reality is he's been crocked for ages, and that's what people. I'm not saying I agree with that justification purely because we've seen players who've had injury problems suddenly catch fitness and make comebacks, or fulfill their potential, etc. Right? So I think 25 million to 30 million would probably be a decent price to get for him. I don't think it's a mad snip purely because of that injury stuff. Clubs are going to factor that in. If it gets lower than that, under 20 mil, that's a bloody deal. That's bargain hunt deal. That's a really good deal for the player. And more than that, I think you've done amazing, because, that injury record is probably what's completely stifled his Arsenal career. Because before his injuries, he was looking like, it was looking like you had two star boys. That's why the song comes in, and you've got Smith Rowe and Saka in it. So yeah, it's an interesting one. What would be great for you though, and it's no coincidence that these two are some of the players that are heavily linked, is PSR wise, this is a dream. Two homegrown lads, profit. Pure profit on the books. Even if you got 25 to 30 million for each of them, that's 60 million banked. And selling someone else. I was having this conversation yesterday. Selling someone else who's not an academy player, even if you sell them for twice the price, you have to spread it out over the years and factor in the previous transfer fee you paid and the wages. And by the time you've come out of all of that, you barely got anything that you can put on the books. So I don't like the way it's set up. I think it absolutely goes against what we're trying to do in English football and in any game of football, and that's to create connections with players that feel like one of your own.
Talent.
Yeah, and to create a system where it benefits clubs to flog their young players that they, have invested in, and the fans as well have invested in Smith Rowe's case especially. It stinks, man. And so, as much as I don't like all the clubs who are gaming the system needs to change. This is not one that we should encourage. Like, we've literally seen a cabal of teams selling their youngsters to each other for crazy prices. We know something's up. We know they're doing it to just fix their books. So they have to come up with something to fix it, because otherwise, we're all just going to be flogging all of our homegrown players, and you might as well just do away with academies. They're literally just a money-making scheme. But back to these players. Let's see how it goes. I think you'll be good to sell them, though, because I think it ultimately will help your team progress, and you'll get the players that you need if you do. If you don't sell them, I think it holds you back.
And I think, on the note of homegrown players and, building up your talent, I do want to take a moment to, I guess, talk a little bit about Kevin Campbell. I do want this to be a bit of a tribute to him. Obviously, Arsenal homegrown talent, mate. He started his career as a trainee at Arsenal, ended up going on and having like 150 plus appearances for us, a decent goal record as well. Did a lot from an Arsenal perspective, did a lot for the team, was really one of the core players in that team for quite some time. Obviously then went on to Nottingham Forest and Everton and became essentially an Everton legend just as much as he was an Arsenal one. And from everything I've heard about him, he was an absolutely stand-up geezer. So I do want to wish his family well and just offer my condolences and just really hit home how important he was to football and obviously how great a person he was. So I do want to just take that moment for all of our listeners to remember Kevin Campbell, legend for Arsenal, legend for Everton. As much as it pains me to say that, because I really hate Everton, we're thinking of him, and if we can get a couple more players like that through the Arsenal ranks, I'd be more than happy.
Yeah, no, I echo those sentiments, man. I've seen, obviously, we consume quite a lot of football content, and Kevin Campbell was everywhere, and he managed to stay relevant and contribute with like pure vibes and positivity and everything that I saw of him. He was always upbeat. He was always cheerleading. He was always supporting the team, even in some of the dark days. And it takes a lot of strength of character to do that. And there's a lot of people that have paid tribute to him since his sad passing a few weeks ago now. Literally everything has been just glowing references. People just, absolutely, raving about how much of a top bloke he was. So, that speaks for itself as well, and tells you what kind of person he was. And he got involved in this kind of content as well. He got involved with fan content. He got involved with lots of people of all different sizes and helped them, and, gave his time and his energy to them, which also, again, is another sign of someone that's, you don't meet people like that much these days. You know what I mean? They're cut from a different cloth. So, RIP to Kevin Campbell, and, condolences to his family, his friends, and anyone that was close to him, because he was a legend. And people throw away that word around too easily as well. But for a club like Arsenal to pay tribute the way they did as well shows how much they cared about him. And Everton, I heard they did some big mural already in Liverpool to commemorate his life, and I'm sure they'll do something when the season kicks off. Both teams probably to pay their respect. So big up Kevin Campbell. Should we move on to England then? That was really nice and somber, and very very level-headed, and now we can descend into the toxicity that is England at Euro 2024.
I'm ready for it, mate. I was absolutely steaming yesterday, so let's get into this, man. We
got 2 games to cover, because obviously the way that this bloody Euro, I love, I know a lot of people have said the Euro. I'm hearing 2 things, John, so I want to get your opinion on this in a minute. Some people are saying this Euros is fantastic, love it, amazing, one of the best tournaments ever. Some people are saying the quality is on the floor and that a lot of teams are rubbish. I actually think the answers, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Like, I think the top teams have been pretty disappointing, and I think the quality that they've shown has been pretty much the latter of what I said. But I think some of the smaller, lesser known or less fancied nations have been great watching. I think that Turkey-Georgia game was top tier. I think that Ukraine-Romania game was unbelievable. And I think a bunch of the games from with those nations involved were really, really entertaining. So,
I agree completely. I think all of the top favourites have been stinky apart from Spain, really. Like every single one of them. England have been woeful. I shouldn't say that because Germany have also been really good. So I'll say Germany and Spain been good. England, France, Portugal, all have stank it up. And really also some of the, I guess like the level just below them have also been pretty poor as well. So the Belgians, the Croatians, they've all been pretty poor too.
Netherlands as well.
The Netherlands, they've not been great. Whereas I think, the real standouts of this tournament have been the teams that no one is expected to do well. Like the Austrias, the Switzerlands, the Georgias. Like the Georgia's probably the biggest one. Like how they've managed to be so entertaining and class has been a revelation for football. And I think it's actually been a good level set for everyone to say structure and team and spirit over individual brilliance can do you a lot of good. And just having the best player in England and the best player in Germany and the best player wherever doesn't guarantee you anything. I'd much rather a team of no-name players that play like they want to go to war for each other than have a bunch of, prancers that are doing nothing on the pitch. So, I agree with you. I think overall the quality has been up and down depending on who you are, but I think it's been a nice kind of refresher for everyone to remember. Don't write these teams off. Don't think one side of the draw is so much easier than the other. Like these teams ain't messing about and they've got their whole country riding for them hard. And some of these teams have literally never even been in it before and never been to this stage of the tournament before. So I think we really need to give some credit to those kinds of teams because it's not all about the Galactico type of players. So that's how I see it, at least.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And I also just want to talk about the format because I've enjoyed it, man. And I wasn't expecting to enjoy the third place teams go through type 24 team format thing. I was, leaning more towards a traditional approach, but I've enjoyed it. And part of it is you get to see these lesser favored nations or nations that haven't participated before because more teams are allowed to join. And then also, I think the jeopardy of not knowing who's going to get in the third place added
makes
another
that third group game a lot more exciting than it would have been previously.
Sure, of course, there were some cases where a team knew as you got later through the in the later down the alphabet of the groups, more teams knew what they had to try and do to get through. So it kind of disadvantaged the ones in Group A and B who didn't really know what was, of course they knew what was happening after game week 2, but they didn't know anything about what the other results were. So maybe there's a way where they can level set that. But I liked it. I added another layer of jeopardy to it. And I'm not gonna continue on that bandwagon. I think we should keep on with this. I think there's just plus sides to it. But the only thing I did want to criticize was the timing for when we podcast to when that game week, the third group game was for England, and between the round of 16 one stank because basically made us unable to analyze that third game. Thank God it was a hideous game.
I'm not sure I even want to talk about that game. That game was so bad.
We can go through it very quickly now. England 0, Slovenia 0, drab draw. Only Kobbie Mainoo and Cole Palmer came out of that game with any sort of credit. And I guess Gahey again was decent. Yeah. Terrible. Performance was poor again. It was a slight uptick compared to Denmark because I thought that was where that was the floor.
Very slight.
Before yesterday's game, of course. But it was not fantastic. Somehow managed to top the group. Somehow Gareth Southgate has got hyenas under the stadiums of all the other nations because he's managed to somehow get on the easier side of the draw with the lesser known nations, right? So now he's had Slovakia and Switzerland and potentially Austria or Turkey or someone like that in semi-final, which, brand name wise sounds a lot better than playing Germany, Spain, France or Portugal, which I think is fair. Somehow fluked it and got through. I don't know what if you want to add anything. In the
worst group of all time, by the way.
Yeah, that group was
that group was a 0-0 group. That was honestly one of the worst groups of
There was only one
performances
win.
in football I've ever seen. Exactly,
There
and
was
it was
one
us.
win in that group. 1-0.
And it was a terrible win.
That game stunk as well. So all the other games are draws, and we won 1-0 in an equally rubbish game. So yeah, I hear you. That was a terrible.
It's got to go down in history as the lowest scoring group ever. I'm sure. I don't even know if that's the correct stat I'm saying, but surely that's got to go down as one of the lowest scoring and most boring groups ever. They may as well just simmed all of those games. Just sim them all. No one needs to watch them, and let's just get on to the next group, because that group was honestly horrible.
Yeah, no. It was really tough viewing. I'll admit that whole group was just poor, but we made it through to face Slovakia in the round of 16, and now obviously that happened yesterday. England managed to win 2-1 after extra time. Boy, though, it did not look good. It was not looking good, bruv. So Slovakia scored a really well-worked goal, man, and we were talking about in the group chats. They played really nice football. They moved the ball really well. Lobotka covered every blade of grass. He looked really good. Skriniar was a rock in defence. And they just had loads of energy. They were just pressing England everywhere. And I think they were probably a little bit unfortunate to only go in 1-0 at half-time, because I feel like their play probably deserved,
I want to talk about that first goal, though, because I feel like, yes, you say that first goal was well worked, but I feel like we made that goal look better because of how spread out every one of our players was. Like, we created so much space for them to just easily waltz into. And by the time that we looked up and saw that, oh, he's on the ball, the pass was already and we were screwed. So I agree with you. It did look like a training ground goal, but I think it was because of how poorly we defended that and just the massive gaping holes that we had all over the pitch. And it speaks to the overall tactics of Southgate throughout that whole game.
Here we go, Southgate watch started already. But no, I agree with you. I think both can be true, though. So I think it was worked well, but it was very simple. I'm not saying it was like a super intricate goal. We basically put it on a plate for them at the same time. Kyle Walker needs to hold smoke as well today, by the way. Yeah. I don't want to make this super personal, but don't forget, he was doing up stinkers in the FA Cup final when we beat them as well. For Kobbie Mainoo, we played him on side. He was not doing well in that game. And he has those games. And it seems like he has them more and more often now in these last couple of years. Yeah, and this like rapid speed emergency seatbelt type thing that we use him for, just in case, it's not bloody necessary against Slovakia. They don't have Mbappe to run onto, or Dembele to run onto, or Yamal or Nico Williams to run onto things. Like, you don't need him. Play Trent, play someone else who's going to actually create for us. You only need Kyle Walker in those emergency situations. He doesn't need to be a starting right back. That's my decision to start. Like, whether it's Trent or someone else, that is open to decision, I think. But I've had enough of Walker. It's not reactionary. I think his performances throughout the group stages were poor as well. I'm not going to buy into the hype from the Denmark assist. I don't think he was good in any of the games that we played. At best, he was average, or maybe in one of them. And he will hurt us because positionally, he's poor. He does this a lot where he's the last defender dropping back and playing, a bag of man on side. So, yeah, get you. It was too easy. Stones and Gahey were poor as well for the lead up. They didn't do well. But yeah, Slovakia played well. And then second half, I actually feel like Lee Dixon, he's gonna hold it as well, because his commentary was really poor. Like, I actually don't think England were that bad in that second half. Like, they certainly were trying more and they were passing it around more. It just they didn't have the incisive, through balls and creativity that we needed, but they looked better. And Slovakia
we had the disallowed goal. Like, we were doing something. I don't know if it was good, but we were doing something more than the first half, at least.
Yeah. I mean, the level definitely improved. I'm not saying it was sensational, but it definitely improved. And Slovakia also didn't look as good in the second half as well, which I think you have to give England some credit for. But Dixon, everything he was saying until the overhead kick was that England were the worst team in the world. So, I understand some of where, we'll talk about it in a bit, the players' feelings stem from. But yeah, Rice, like you said, hit the post. We had a disallowed goal. Phil Foden needs to have a look at himself, because there's no world where he needs to be offside. That square back was so like choreographed.
Clear.
You could
he
see
could see
that was
exactly where the guy was and where he was. Like,
just hold your run.
It's literally an under 10s type of error. That was
Yeah.
honestly so poor.
You could see it from the TV that he was offside. Like, I was
Yeah.
shocked that the lino didn't call it at the time, but I get it. They've been told not, to wait or whatever. But yeah, it was poor from him. I was quite harsh on Trippier at the time. I thought he didn't have to square it. He could have shot as well, but it was the right decision to square it. Actually, when you think about it, you need to give someone else who's in a better position the chance to score. It's just a shame. I guess he could have maybe seen that Foden was offside and done something else, but you got to lay more blame on Foden, who, by the way, again, he had an all-time stinky performance. He should have been hooked way earlier. Again,
and as soon as we did hook him, what happened? We scored.
Exactly. He's still walking around the pitch coming off and we scored. That was how quick it was, the instant impact. But yeah, then Bellingham scores with pretty much the last kick of the game. I think we're in the 94th plus minute.
What a kick it was.
And there's been a lot made about this as well, because it was kind of like Bolton, Tony Pulis type football. Long throw from Kyle Walker. Gahey wins the flick on, and Bellingham does a scissor kick to win it. Like, sensational finish, but the way we got there was some real Route 1 stuff. But then I was saying it, and I think we were saying it in the group, you knew England were going to win after that. The way Slovakia had set up was to hold that nil, and that was it. They made all their subs. They did everything tactically to tweak it to get that clean sheet. And as soon as it was gone, they'd used all their subs. They were done. England had about 4 forwards on. It was inevitable. And yeah, Kane scores with basically the first kick of extra time off an Ivan Toney flick on.
Toney assist, yeah.
Yeah. Really good thinking by him, who he deserves a shout out as well. He had a really good cameo. I thought he was really, really, really handy. And it's good to see him, be able to perform like that off the bench, because I think we'll need it again in the tournament, whether it's against Switzerland or someone else. You'll need, what did Southgate say he calls them? Game changers or something tacky? He said he calls his subs. So yeah, England get the lead, and as is always the case when England get the lead, on comes Gallagher, on comes another defender, Konza, I think it was, 2 banks of 4, 2 banks of 5, sorry, and you sit behind the ball, you see it out. So England get the win. Now, there's been a lot of discourse around this stuff. Obviously, the performance wasn't great, but there's a lot of people saying now that England was super lucky to get that win. Do you agree with that? Or do you think people are just, again, going a bit too far with the negativity?
I think we are lucky to get the win, but I don't think it changes anything, right? We got the win in the end, and that's all that really matters, right? Like, at the end of the day, we played poorly and we ended up winning. I think Roy Keane put it really well in kind of his last speech before the broadcast finished. Some of the happiest times you have as a player is when you really play poorly and you end up getting a big win. So I think, yes, we were lucky, but at the same time, what does it matter? We're through to the next round.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know I think lucky, not to get into, the English language word police, but I don't know if lucky is the right word. I think we didn't, like you said, it was unconvincing, because I don't think you can call that Bellingham goal lucky. There's nothing lucky about it. Like you said, it was Route 1, sure. It's not the most pretty football to get there, but it was very choreographed, and man did a scissor kick. It wasn't
a deflection or something, yeah.
Yeah, he did a scissor kick.
He earned that goal, and
That's pure
I think
skill.
The second goal we also earned it too. It's not like it was a complete, deflection or whatever else. So I agree with you. I don't think it's the right word to call it lucky. It's just really, really risky. The things that we did were very risky, and the fact that we came out of that game unscathed is a very low probability event. I think if you were to play 94 minutes again and, losing 1-0 those whole 94 minutes, 9 times out of 10 or more, you lose that game. And I think that's maybe where the lucky people are thinking about it. But in my opinion, it's just, you don't want to ever do that again. Like, you don't win that game most of the time if you do that again.
Yeah, it's not sustainable, and it's not a route to victory, which I think is pretty key in this knockout football. I get it; you got to get wins, whatever any means necessary. You get wins, but I don't know if you can continually do this. It's not repeatable. I think many times. I think we, and not to bring it to United again, but we had this. Remember, everyone was saying you can't keep winning this way. You're fortunate to win. It's lucky. It's lucky. It's lucky. While I don't agree it was lucky, it's just not sustainable to play in that way.
Same thing for Liverpool as well.
Yeah. It's not
Couldn't
sustainable. True. Liverpool were doing that too, with the constantly going behind and then coming back. It was less, I think with them, it was less a style of play thing. It was just like an application thing where it seemed like they weren't applying themselves until they went, behind. Whereas with us, it's just a fly by the seat of your pants, rely on individual moments of brilliance all the time. And we've got, Man U have got less game winners, match winners than England do. So maybe that's what Southgate thinks. I've got all these world stars. They're going to keep pulling me out the mud. But I tell you what, you don't want to go down to the 94th, 95th minute every game. And as an England fan, and all of us don't want to do that either, because our heart rates are going to go through the roof. But let's get on to the post-match then, because I feel like we've covered the game pretty much as you can without cussing everyone out. And I don't want to be one of those people, in that media space who are super, super negative. England won, well done. That's the job they got done. And you've got to move on to the next. But what do you make of Bellingham's comments, our post-match? Because he was pretty bullish. I think he talked about the noise, the negativity, people talking rubbish. What do you make of it all? Because it just feels like this English players versus the media feud is going to keep going until we either win or get knocked out.
Yeah, I mean, the media ain't going to stop talking. So, of course, there's never going to be silence, right? I said it to you the other day. I'm sick of listening to people talk about England, right? We're listening to a broadcast of Spain against Georgia, and I'm hearing them talk about England again. I don't want to hear it. We just had 2 hours plus of talking about England, right? We don't have to bring it back to England every single minute of the day. And, Lineker's doing this saltiness where he keeps bringing it up every 5 seconds with all these new guests that he has on it. Oh, they say it too. Oh, he says it too. It's not just us. It doesn't matter if it's not just us. Shut up and just watch the game, man. Stop talking about them and leave them alone, right? I know that England are not. They're kind of inviting on some of this negativity because of how poor they are. But at the end of the day, it's not helping them at all. And if you truly want them to win, if you truly want them to be, the golden generation, just give them a break, right? Like, be concise and say whatever criticism you need to say, and then let's move on, because it doesn't help to just keep droning on the same nonsense every single time. I wish everyone would talk a little bit less, be a bit more like Roy Keane, and think about what they say it once, and then move on. We don't need to keep on saying it 5 times every single broadcast, because it's not. As much as Bellingham and all them lot might try not to, if it's happening 100 times every single day, how do you miss and avoid 100 times of negativity every single day? It's not possible. Say it once and move on. So I think from Bellingham's point of view, he's well within his rights to come out and say that. He's just scored an overhead kick to save England from going out in the round of 16 in the Euros. Say what you want, mate. You've clearly got a massive pair of bollocks on you, and you actually deliver when you need to deliver, even though you've had a poor game. So at this point, everyone can shut up and just let him say what he needs to say, because he could end up being one of the best English players of all time. And if you lot would just shut up and watch him and enjoy what he's doing, you might have a better time of it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I get what you're saying completely, and I feel like I don't want to dismiss what the other pundits have achieved, but I would say looking at the panel, including maybe Rio Ferdinand or Cesc across the different broadcasters, Roy Keane is probably the most decorated person on that panel, along with those guys maybe. And maybe actually he's more decorated than Rio, because I was at United for longer, and he may have won a few more club stuff than Cesc, certainly not the World Cup or anything like that. But when he says, all right, England didn't play amazing, but it's about getting results, and talking about the benefits for the unity of the team and for the togetherness and the belief to get through tough moments together, I might say you want to have a listen to what he's saying and actually try and process what he's saying, rather than going by what is the popular opinion in this new fan world, that football has to be pretty and we have to tiki-taka and there's only one way of playing. Because I'm telling you right now, if England win the World Cup and it's playing football the way that they are, but they're getting these moments and Harry Kane and Bellingham are stepping up and all these Saka's stepping up and we win it, these guys will be on their hands and knees begging them and kissing their arms and crooning over them like they hadn't said any of this stuff, criticising the way that they're playing. Because that's how reactionary they are, and that's how they lack like an independent mind of their own. Instead of just concentrating on how people play football, maybe think about what the goal of football is. And when all of your most decorated, winningest people on the panels are saying that, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, then maybe you need to have a look at yourself and think and analyse why you're concentrating purely on the performance, the style of play and all this rubbish. Sure, we agree it's not sustainable. It doesn't feel sustainable. But you know what? They can do it. They've got enough match winners. That's why I mentioned it earlier. They have got all of these players. This is what their argument was. Best player in Spain, best player in England, best player in Germany. What do you think these best players do? They turn up in big moments. And ultimately, the team that wins this is going to have their big players turn up the most. And so far, do you know who scored for England, Johns?
Bellingham is the only player, I'm imagining.
No, but there's only two players. Bellingham's got 2 and Kane's got 2. Bellingham's got 1 winner and Kane's got 1 winner. Let's see what happens. But if you'd have come into the tournament, who would have you... let's put our club biases aside. Who would you have said are England's best players before we came here? I'm pretty sure everyone would say Kane and Bellingham would be in that top 3.
Yeah.
So your big players are stepping up. I don't know, man. I just think we need to not just follow the crowd with all of our critique and our post-match and everyone talking about the game. Can you point out, like you said, what Roy Keane has done and give constructive criticism? Yes. I think there's room for that. But to harp on about it, like Gary Lineker and those guys are on Speak to Football or whatever their podcast is called, where they're literally talking about it every single episode. On every broadcast, like you said, they bring it up and it's all like very snide and underhanded stuff. Just get over yourselves, man. Really,
at the same time,
yourselves and support them.
If you care about the team winning, what good do you think you're doing by saying this? Are you trying to change Southgate's mind? What are you trying to do? Because at the end of the day, right, all criticism given should have a goal in mind, right? And whether that goal is to get the players to buck up or to get the manager to figure it out, it should all have a goal in mind. And I think at that point, when you giving constructive criticism, once is enough. They've heard it, it's done, let's move on. But when you harping on about it over and over again, you surely need to know that what you are doing is sowing seeds of doubt into that team and creating disharmony. So at that point, you need to stop saying it, right? I'm all for giving criticism where criticism is due, but I don't need to say it 100 times over, right? Once is enough, and let's move on. You've got your point across, and now you keep on saying it. You're getting into the territory of you actually want this team to be bad, and you're actually you're gaining something from this team being bad, right? 100%. Because if we were winning and slapping teams off the park, they wouldn't be talking this much. No. They know they wouldn't be talking this much. But us being this bad is giving them content to drive all their programs and their podcasts and whatever else. So let's not go at it like we really care about England winning, because it's very clear from this point we don't care about England winning. We care about having our say.
And, I mean, there's two things as well. Just before we move on to the next point, you read the room. So, like you said, after you've said it once or twice, read the room. You don't need to beat a dead horse. They're getting it. Like you said, there's a million different content creators all saying the same thing now. You've done your piece. You've had your say. Move on.
They've literally come out and acknowledged it as well.
And now, the second point I was going to make, 2 or 3 of them have come out into the press and acknowledged that they've heard some of these comments, called out particular people and shown a negative reaction to it. What you do, like you said, if you really care about the team, is you don't double down on it. You pull back and you find a way to engage with them that's going to foster a positive reaction from them and support them. And that's not what's happened. And so, yeah, you lean towards the cynical view that they're trying to do it for their own benefit. And yeah, it stinks. Get behind the team. It could be worse. You know, there are a lot of teams that were. Italy's gone out already. Belgium have gone out already. There are a lot of favoured nations that have struggled in this Euros even more than England. So let's try and focus on the positives, and who knows, it can only go up from here. And maybe that Bellingham moment and that Slovakia win will be the game changer for the team and propel them into better things. So. Let's get into the last talking point then quickly, because the other big thing, and I was shocked at this, so I want to get your point of view on it. A lot of Arsenal fans were going bonkers on Ian Wright for saying Saka should play left back or could play left back, right? I think he offered it as an option. I don't think he was definitive in saying Saka needs to play left back. But anyway, Arsenal fans went berserk on him, which is wild because he's like one of your biggest legends. And then, it happened to happen during the game yesterday when England were going for it. Palmer came in at right wing and Saka played at left back. Do you think this is something to go forward with and replicate again? Or do you think this was just a one-off situation in a game like that when you're going for it, where you try it? What's your take?
I think it was a one-off situation where you just go for it. But I do think that Ian Wright's comments have been heard by Southgate. And I think I'm not in the crowd of the Arsenal fans that were going absolutely berserk when he first suggested it, because at the end of the day, it was a suggestion. And you never think the manager's actually going to go and do it, right? Like it wasn't a crazy suggestion, but it definitely wasn't like on top of mind for everyone, right? Like it's not something I think the manager was really even thinking about until Ian Wright said it. So I think that just plays into the point that people are listening to what they are saying. So I wasn't in that crowd, but I will say I wasn't a major fan of the idea of it. And the main idea for that is that would be fine if Saka was historically not very effective in that position at right wing, right? But Saka has literally been voted on multiple years now as England's best player, right? Not only that, he's also shown up. Well, I mean, you say that, but at the end of the day, you've just called out Kane and Bellingham, who are supposed to be our best players, alongside of Kyle Walker and all these other players who are supposed to be some of the most experienced players we've got. They're also players that are highly decorated in the sport, have won many things. And yet we're talking about a guy that's literally come into the team as a youngster, is carrying his team by his socks, literally by himself for multiple years. And we're now saying that he, despite being one of our best players in multiple tournaments now, should not play in his main position where he's the most effective for our team. I said the stat to you before, right? There's only 3 players that I think coming into this tournament had scored more than like 4 goals. And that was Saka, Foden and Kane, right? Why are we talking about Saka going at left back just to get Palmer into the team when Palmer also can play in a central position and he also could play on the left, where Foden has been completely ineffective over the last 4 games that we've watched, right? So that was my point, and it's kind of in the same area that a lot of Liverpool fans have been going with the Trent thing, which is, why are you talking only about Trent as if he is the main reason for this team being terrible? So that's my perspective, right? When I first heard it, I didn't like the idea of it, because I think Saka does a lot more damage, and we've seen in the first 3 games and now in the game yesterday, he caused loads of problems. And I know it's not silky, sexy football to watch him do it, but he causes problems over and over again. He gets people on yellow cards. He gets past people. He gets balls into the box. He gets balls onto the edge of the box. Yesterday, within the first 10 minutes, he got a ball to Bellingham. Had Bellingham been a bit smarter about it, could have scored. So from my point of view, it was ridiculous to really go ahead and do that. But I can see why Southgate ended up doing it in the end, because I think, Trippier got injured anyway, right? Like he hurt himself, and then he had kind of no other option. Obviously, Joe Gomez and a lot of these other players aren't really the right kind of people to be bringing into that kind of really high pressure situation. So he ends up putting Saka at left back. But then, after 20 minutes, he moves him back to right wing, and then he's moving things all around anyway. So, I don't think it's going to keep going ahead, because I don't think that's Southgate's preferred style. I don't think that he thinks that that's really the way that England are going to win. But I do think it was a pure desperation play at the time, right? Like, how do I get an exciting player on the pitch and avoid me being crucified in the media? And that's Cole Palmer. So I don't think it will keep going on. I hope it doesn't keep going on. I think we can find a better way to do this. But at the same time, if he's going to go 5-3-2 and play Tony at the top, I don't mind him being left wing back. I really don't mind Saka. It's not a pride thing. I've seen a lot of tribalism people saying, "Oh, you just don't want Saka to play left back because he's your star boy, and you don't want to embarrass your player like that." No, it's got nothing to do with that. It's the fact that he's one of our most effective, if not most effective attacker, and has proven it over the last 2-3 tournaments that he can be the most effective attacker in his natural position, which is right wing. Right? If he was useless like Foden, I'd say get him off the pitch, let alone put him left back. So that's my viewpoint. It's not this tribalism. I don't care if he's on the pitch. I think he's great, but if you're going to take him out of his right wing position, you better have a really good reason why you're doing that.
Yeah,
and let's be honest, Cole Palmer wasn't even that great when he came on yesterday. He does the same thing over and over again, cuts in and tries to cross it, can't beat the first man. So I don't want to hear this like Cole Palmer is the best player ever. He's the best thing since sliced bread. Nah, mate, he's like the rest of them. You put him in a crap system and he ain't going to work either.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it is. I mean, there are some Arsenal fans who were losing it because of tribalism, for sure. Like, I mean, there would be too, if it was United fans or Liverpool fans as well, with the Trent thing. I get it. You have to back your man, especially when it feels like the narrative around it is unfair. And I do think it would be very harsh on Bukayo to move him from right wing, where I don't think he's had a great tournament so far, but he's definitely not been in the worst performance category. He's had, I think, the first game he was good. The second game,
only goal, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So for the time that he was on the pitch, I think he was good in the first game. I think he kind of petered out, but he was obviously a bit like unfit or whatever, coming back from an injury. Second game, he wasn't great, but the whole team stunk it up. Third game, ditto, same thing happened. I don't think you can blame him for it. I do think the idea that some players need to be sacrificed to make the team work is the right one. I don't think Saka is the one to sacrifice, though. So while I think it's not crazy to put him left back, and in certain game states, I would do it, like the one yesterday. I think it made sense because not only was Trippier injured, and you could have put Joe Gomez there, and they would have if they were winning, but they were losing, and they had 15 minutes left to go. So you have to do something, and so I think it makes sense, and I would expect to see him do it again if we're in that scenario. But I don't think it's a situation where Saka needs to be sacrificed from the start at left back, because I'm 100% certain now that Phil Foden should not start another game in this Euros. He absolutely should not start another game in this Euros. He's been poor now for 4 games. The only glimpse we've had, I think it was 10 or 15 minutes in that Denmark game when he had a couple of shots.
Yeah, he hit the post.
And that was it. He's done absolutely sweet F-all for the rest of the tournament. So I think it's very obvious he is our Wirtz, a player that we really rate, think is top quality. I think Wirtz was one of the Bundesliga players of the season as well, alongside Kane. But we've worked out that this doesn't work.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is as well. I'm not some oracle. We can all give our opinions. I don't know what the answer is once you take Foden out. But I'm almost certain that is what needs to happen. Keep Saka on the right. Either chuck Gordon, Palmer, or someone else on the left. And that's the way to go. It's not going to work. It's been proven now for 4 games. And we can't continue that experiment any further. And it's unfair too. Because if you're rating Trent so highly, I will back the Scousers right on this one. I don't think Trent worked in midfield. I don't think he was diabolical, like some people were saying, but I don't think it worked. You've abandoned that after 1 game. Or was it 2? Did he play the second game? Yeah, 2 games.
He played second game, yeah.
Or he played half of the second game or whatever. They hooked him early, didn't they?
Hooked,
So you've abandoned that, but you're not willing to abandon Foden in left wing when it's clearly not working.
When he spends 99% of his team, not 99% of the match, not on the left wing.
Exactly, he's hugging Bellingham's hand at Cam for the whole match and offering no width. come on, man. Like, I don't want to pile in on Southgate as much as is needed, but this is where he's gonna hold corn, because it's so obvious. Even laymen like you and me can spot this and go, "What the hell is going on? We need to change something there." And I don't know if Gordon is the answer. I don't know if Palmer's the answer, but something has to be. It's certainly not Foden. So, yeah, let's dead this whole Saka left back thing and find another way to solve the issue, because I don't think it could, like you said, it can work out when you're playing a 5-3-2, because you literally don't have wingers. So what do you do with your winging players? You got to put the winger players. You got to put them, into the system, and I think that makes sense. But otherwise, I don't want to hate on Wrighty, because he's coming up with ideas. Right, he's just like the rest of us. He's seeing the struggle that we're having with the formation and the style, and he's thinking of solutions. So let's see how it goes. Let's move on to the preview section then, Johns, because you obviously got the massive Switzerland quarterfinal on Saturday, 5 p.m. I'm going to be at a bloody wedding, so that's going to be fun. I'll find a way to find out what's going on. But let's get into the predictions and previews then. Johns, we'll start with you. Do you think England will get through, and how do you think the game will go?
Again, I'm going to default to positivity. I think we're going to win 2-0. I think Switzerland are not going to be able to deal with us, because we're actually going to put out the right team. And I was serious when I said the 5-3-2, because I think Tony deserves to start. I think Tony showed in that match he makes Kane better too. If we want to do this lump it up style, there's no better player than Ivan Toney to be at the top of that lumping up. So I'm going to go for that. We're going to start with a 5-3-2. Saka's going to be on the left wing back position. We'll have Trent or somebody on the right wing back position, and we're going to still somehow try and shovel Foden into there, and Bellingham and whatever else, and we're going to stick Tony up top, and we're going to play real old school Bolton football, slap it up top, little header down, and Kane's going to slap one into the back of the net, and then Bellingham's going to come up with a screamer from 35 yards. We're going to win 2-0. I don't care what feels like it's realistic. We're winning this 2-0. Come on.
Oh man,
my prediction's still in play, man. I've got to keep going for it.
If Hallmark made quarterfinal results, that will be it. I like the positivity. I'm not mad at that shout. Changing the formation altogether. I agree. Tony looked good. I err on the side of keeping him as an impact player. I think he could be really useful off the bench if the game kind of requires that kind of character and that kind of influence. I agree with you though. He looked good with Kane. I'll tell you that. A good old British heritage of the old. I know it wasn't a 4-4-2, but having two up top playing together, I like it, man. I'm with the idea of football bringing it back. I think it would be great to see, actually. But I don't think so. I think he'll keep the same formation. I hope and pray he keeps Cobby in there, because I'll tell you what, we gave him no airtime today, but he was our best player on that pitch while he was on the pitch. He was the only one.
Minutes, he was the best player.
Even afterwards, I would say, I don't see anyone's individual I'm talking overall performance. Obviously, Bellingham scored a scissor kick and played well. Scored goals. I think performance-wise, consistency over that period of time, he got the ball, he drove with it. All of the most dangerous situations that came up in the game came from something that Mainu was involved in. I thought he linked up really well with Saka as well on that right-hand side. I like their combination play. I pray that he stays in the team. I think it would be extremely irritating if Southgate takes him out, because I feel like he was nice with Rice as well. I feel like I heard some absolute drivel and saw some drivel that Mainu and Rice were poor and blah, blah, blah. They didn't do anything. Stepping on each other's toes. The game. There's absolute,
it's clear.
It's absolute breeze. I actually felt that two worked better than any other two we've had so far. And they offer some really different qualities, and at the same time can do a lot of the same things. So when one pushes forward, the other sits back, and they worked it out. So I like that. So I think Mainu will stay in there. Bellingham will be in the 10. Saka will stay right wing. It's the left wing one which is up for grabs, and I think he's going to finally see the light and either put Gordon or Eze, I think, on the left-hand side for this Switzerland game. But I do like your idea of a 5-3-2 because I think Switzerland play that formation too, don't they? Or they play something of the like with a back five. So matching up,
we're going to need something to go against Akanji, mate, because Akanji ain't messing about. We're going to need some serious firepower up there, and I think Ivan Toney is the man that's got old Akanji's number.
Yeah, I mean they're two handfuls. Pause. Kane and Toney, that's hard.
That's giving Cher problems as well, mate.
Yeah, Cher, Rodriguez on the left-hand side. I think they can get at him. He's not massive, and I think you could beat him aerially and stuff. So I think there's a route to winning, but I don't think Southgate's going to go that drastic for that. I think he's going to stick with a 4-3-3 and hoping that the personnel changes, again, reiterating what I said in the previews. If you get the personnel right, I think England could beat Switzerland. But I think it's going to be a slog. I don't see a world in which Switzerland don't score. So I feel like I'm just a broken record and I keep saying England 2-1, but it was true in the last game. I didn't predict extra time, but we'll leave that part out. But yeah, I think England are going to win 2-1. And I expect Kane to get on the score sheet again. But yeah, I don't know if Jude will score a screamer, but I wouldn't be surprised if he turned up, Lampard settings onto a late run into the box to score a cross or something like that and get us to win. But yeah, I'm going to be on the positivity train as well. So I'm going to say England win 2-1 and march on to the semi-finals where I don't think they'll play Netherlands. I'm going to call it now. I don't think Netherlands will get through either Austria or Turkey. I think if they play either or, they lose. So it's likely that we'll probably play Austria or Turkey in the semis. And I'll be honest, they both play really nice football.
We can beat them both,
but England can beat them both. And that should be the carrot that dangles in front of all of those players to motivate them to get to that final and try and beat one of the big nations in a one-off game. And I think it's doable. So yeah, let's do this. Come on, England. Let's get the win against Switzerland and keep marching on and keep sticking it to all the pundits that are waffling out their arse. All right, John. Yeah. So I think we've got to be at the end of the pod. It's late now.
Yeah.
We've broken over into Tuesday in terms of our recording, so we'll wrap it up here. So good pod though. Let's fight against the media and support the team. So come on, England.
All right. Cheers, mate. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Sports Social Podcast Network.